6 months later, the Federation Council chamber on Earth was filled with representatives from over 24 species, gathered for an unprecedented hearing. At the center of the room sat Zara and Kira, no longer refugees but advocates for a cause that had grown far beyond their original plea for help. The change in Kira was remarkable. The frightened, injured child who had arrived at Meridian Station had blossomed into a confident young girl whose questions now shaped interstellar policy discussions. She spoke 3 languages fluently and was learning 2 more, her natural curiosity finally given the freedom to flourish. "The question before us today," announced Federation Secretary General Martinez, "is how to establish protocols for protecting individuals who flee societies that punish intellectual freedom or cultural curiosity." The Zalari delegation was led by High Counselor Vex himself, who had undergone his own transformation during the months of investigation following the Meridian Station incident. What they had discovered within their own society had shocked even the most progressive members of their government. "Honored representatives," Counselor Vex addressed the chamber in careful standard, "the Zalari Republic formally requests Federation assistance in reforming our educational and family protection systems. We have learned that isolation from other perspectives has not made us stronger, but has made us smaller." Captain Chen sat in the gallery, wearing her dress uniform decorated with the Federation Star for heroism. Beside her, Dr. Webb watched as his former patient confidently answered questions from beings whose species she had only learned about in the past few months. "Kira," asked the Altarian representative, "what would you say to other children who are afraid to ask questions in their societies?" The young girl considered the question seriously before answering. "I would tell them that questions are not dangerous. Fear of questions is dangerous. When we stop asking questions, we stop growing. And when we stop growing, we start dying inside." Her words, translated into dozens of languages, rippled through the chamber with an impact that no adult diplomat could have achieved. Admiral Torres, now serving as Federation military liaison, presented the final piece of evidence that had emerged from the investigation. The Meridian Station incident has revealed that this problem extends far beyond the Zalari Republic. We have received asylum requests from 17 different species in the past 6 months, all citing similar restrictions on intellectual freedom and cultural expression. The scope of the problem was staggering. Across the galaxy, authoritarian societies had been using isolation and fear to control their populations, punishing curiosity and independent thought as threats to social order. The solution, Admiral Torres continued, is not military intervention, but the establishment of safe havens and support networks for those brave enough to seek change. The proposal that emerged from the hearings became known as the Meridian Protocols, a set of interstellar agreements establishing the right of individuals to seek asylum when facing persecution for intellectual or cultural reasons. More importantly, it created a network of support for peaceful reform within participating societies. Zara had been offered a position as the first director of the Cultural Freedom Initiative, a role that would allow her to help other families facing situations similar to her own. The irony was not lost on her that fleeing her society had ultimately given her the chance to help change it. "Are you ready for this?" Captain Chen asked her as they prepared for the final vote. "No," Zara admitted, "but Kira taught me something important. Being ready isn't what matters. Being willing is what matters." When the vote was called, the Meridian Protocols passed unanimously. Even the species that had initially been skeptical recognized the importance of protecting those who chose courage over comfort. The celebration afterward was unlike anything the Federation Council had ever seen. Representatives from dozens of species mingled freely, sharing stories and perspectives that had been impossible during the formal proceedings. At the center of it all, Kira moved from group to group, asking the kinds of questions that made adults think differently about their own assumptions. Captain Santos of the Lucky Strike had been invited as a representative of the civilian fleet that had made the initial stand possible. She found herself surrounded by diplomats and military officers, all wanting to hear about the battle from her perspective. "You want to know the truth?" she told them. "We weren't heroes that day. We were just people who couldn't stand by and watch a mother and child be handed over to someone who would hurt them. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't heroic. Sometimes it's just human." As the evening wound down, Dr. Webb found himself in conversation with several Zalari medical professionals who had come to Earth to study human approaches to treating trauma in children. The collaboration that had begun with one emergency surgery was growing into a comprehensive exchange of knowledge and techniques. Dr. Webb, one of the Zalari physicians, asked, "How did your people develop such strong protective instincts toward children who are not biologically related to you?" Dr. Webb thought about the question carefully. "I think it comes from understanding that children represent potential. Every child who is allowed to ask questions, to think freely, to explore their curiosity, might be the one who discovers something that benefits everyone. When we protect children, we're protecting our own future." Later that night, Zara sat with Kira in their temporary quarters overlooking the lights of Geneva. Tomorrow they would begin their new life, traveling between worlds to help establish safe houses and support networks for families seeking freedom. "Mama," Kira said sleepily, "do you think Papa will ever understand why we left?" Zara considered this. Reports from the Zalari homeworld indicated that Kolar had been arrested and was undergoing rehabilitation, part of a broader effort to address the cultural problems that had been exposed. Whether he would ever truly understand remained to be seen. "I hope so, little star. But even if he doesn't, other people are beginning to understand. That's what matters." "The humans understood right away," Kira observed. "Why do you think that is?" "Because humans have learned something that we forgot," Zara replied. "They learned that taking care of each other isn't a weakness. It's the source of all their strength." As Earth rotated through its night cycle, similar conversations were taking place on ships throughout the galaxy. The story of Meridian Station had become legend, but more importantly, it had become inspiration. Families who had been suffering in silence now knew there was hope. Societies that had been stagnating in isolation were beginning to open their doors to new ideas. The plea that had started it all, "I ran away from my husband, please let us in," had become a rallying cry for freedom across the stars. But the real victory wasn't in the protocols or the ceremonies or the diplomatic achievements. The real victory was in a small girl who was no longer afraid to ask questions, and in the knowledge that her curiosity would never again be seen as a crime. In the end, that was what humanity had given the galaxy. Proof that wonder and compassion were not weaknesses to be suppressed, but strengths to be celebrated. And in space stations and colonies throughout human space, the message was clear. When someone asks for help, when someone chooses courage over fear, humanity will always answer, "Come in. You're safe now." The moment that changed everything came not from the military vessels or the improvised civilian fleet, but from an unexpected source. Dr. Webb had been monitoring Zalari communication frequencies to better understand their language and medical needs when he detected something unusual. "Admiral Torres," he called from the medical bay, "I'm picking up internal Zalari communications. Their translator protocols aren't completely secure. I think you need to hear this." The intercepted transmission crackled through the bridge speakers. It was a conversation between Commander Thex and someone identified as High Counselor Vex back on the Zalari homeworld. "Commander Thex, your mission parameters were to retrieve 2 criminals, not engage in military action against a Federation station." The counselor's voice was sharp with disapproval. "The humans refused to surrender them," Thex replied. "They claim protection under laws we do not recognize. And now you have involved our fleet in an incident that could lead to war with a species we know nothing about. The Council is not pleased with your escalation of this matter." There was a pause before the counselor continued. "Commander, new information has come to light regarding this case. The female Zara has filed formal accusations against her husband through diplomatic channels. These accusations include documented evidence of child abuse and domestic violence." "Impossible," Thex protested. "Kolar is a respected member of our society. Respected members of our society do not beat children for asking questions," the counselor replied coldly. "The evidence is overwhelming, Commander. Medical records, witness testimonies, educational reports. The child's teachers have been documenting the escalating violence for months." Admiral Torres felt a surge of vindication. The truth was finally emerging, and it was more damning than even Zara had indicated. The counselor's next words surprised everyone listening. "Furthermore, preliminary investigations suggest that Zara is not alone in her concerns. There are other families experiencing similar situations, other children being punished for natural curiosity. This incident has forced us to examine problems we have been ignoring for too long. High Counselor, are you suggesting we abandon our principles? Thex asked, confusion clear in his voice. I am suggesting that beating children is not a principle worth defending, the counselor replied. Commander, you will stand down immediately and return to Zalari space. The refugees will remain under human protection pending a full investigation. But my brother's honor. Your brother's honor was forfeit the moment he raised his hand against a child. Do not let family loyalty cloud your judgment further. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zara stood frozen, hardly daring to believe what she had heard. Her own people, the government she had fled from, were acknowledging the truth of her situation. Captain Chen, Admiral Torres said quietly, please establish a secure channel to the Zalari High Council. I believe we have the foundation for a diplomatic solution. The next hour brought developments that no one could have predicted. High Counselor Vex, speaking directly to Admiral Torres, formally apologized for the military action against Meridian Station. More importantly, he requested Federation assistance in investigating what he called cultural practices that may have caused harm to our citizens. Admiral Torres, the counselor said through the translator, we have lived in isolation for so long that we may have lost sight of certain fundamental truths. The courage shown by one mother to protect her child has forced us to examine ourselves in ways we have avoided for generations. Zara found herself in the unprecedented position of being asked to serve as a liaison between the humans and her own people. The Federation offered her and Kira full citizenship and protection, but they also presented another option, helping to facilitate change within Zalari society itself. I don't know if I'm brave enough for that, she confessed to Captain Chen as they stood in the observation deck, watching the Zalari ships prepare to depart. You left everything you knew to protect your daughter's freedom to think, Captain Chen replied. I'd say courage isn't your problem. Little Kira had recovered enough to join them, though she still moved carefully as her healing continued. She pressed her face against the observation window, watching the sleek alien ships with fascination rather than fear. Mama, she said thoughtfully, if we help change things at home, will other children be allowed to ask questions too? Maybe, little star. It won't be easy, and it will take time. But it's worth trying, isn't it? Like the humans tried to save us? Zara looked at her daughter's hopeful face and felt something shift in her heart. The fear that had driven her to flee was still there, but it was being replaced by something else. The possibility that running away might just be the first step toward making things better. Dr. Webb joined them at the observation window, carrying a medical tablet with Kira's final scan results. Perfect neural function, he announced. No signs of lasting damage. She's going to be just fine. Dr. Webb, Kira said in her improving standard, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor like you. Is that allowed? On human worlds, you can be anything you want to be, he replied. Doctor, teacher, explorer, artist. The only limit is your imagination. Even ask questions? Especially ask questions. That's how we learn new things. As the Zalari ships began their journey home, they carried with them something they had not expected to find: hope for change. The incident at Meridian Station had exposed fractures in their society that could no longer be ignored, cracks through which new ideas might finally take root. Captain Santos of the Lucky Strike had the last word of the day, her voice carrying over the fleet communication channels as the civilian ships prepared to return to their normal routes. Well, folks, that was something special. Today we showed the galaxy what happens when ordinary people decide to do the right thing. Y'all should be proud. As the various ships dispersed back to their normal lives, each captain carried with them the knowledge that they had been part of something larger than themselves. They had proven that heroism wasn't the exclusive domain of soldiers and politicians, but could emerge from anyone willing to stand up for what was right. The word of what had happened at Meridian Station began to spread throughout human space and beyond, becoming the kind of story that inspired others to act when their moment came. Admiral Rebecca Torres had seen many battles in her 30-year career, but the sight that greeted her at Meridian Station was unlike anything in her experience. A damaged civilian space station was surrounded by an improvised fleet of freight haulers, passenger liners, and mining vessels, all standing defiantly against 3 Zalari military cruisers. Admiral Torres to all civilian vessels, she broadcast. This is the Earth Federation Navy. You have shown incredible courage, but military assets are now on scene. Please withdraw to a safe distance. The response surprised her. Captain Santos of the Lucky Strike spoke for the entire civilian fleet. With respect, Admiral, we started this fight together and we'll finish it together. These folks asked for our help and we're not backing down now. Admiral Torres smiled grimly. She had served alongside civilian captains before, and she knew that stubborn streak well. Very well. All civilian vessels maintain current positions but follow fleet coordination protocols. We finish this as one fleet. Commander Thex found himself facing not just 3 military destroyers but an entire community united in purpose. His tactical computer calculated the odds of victory, and the results were no longer in his favor. This is Commander Thex to Admiral Torres. He transmitted. You are interfering in Zalari sovereign affairs. The criminals aboard your station must be returned to face justice under our laws. Admiral Torres's response was measured but firm. Commander, these individuals have requested asylum under interstellar humanitarian protocols. Until proper legal proceedings are completed, they remain under Federation protection. Your Federation has no authority in this sector, Thex replied. We do not recognize your laws or treaties. Then let me explain our position in terms you'll understand, Admiral Torres said, her voice carrying the weight of command. Those people are under our protection. Any attempt to take them by force will be considered an act of war against the Earth Federation. Are you prepared for that consequence? For the first time, uncertainty crept into Commander Thex's voice. The Zalari military was powerful within their own territory, but they had never faced the full might of the Earth Federation. Their isolationist policies had left them ignorant of human military capabilities. In the medical bay, Zara held her daughter close as the station's artificial gravity fluctuated from the battle damage. Kira had fallen asleep despite the chaos around them, her small hand clutching a toy that Dr. Webb had given her. Mama, Kira murmured sleepily. Are we really safe now? Yes, little star, Zara whispered. The humans are keeping us safe. Dr. Webb approached with a tablet displaying the latest scans. Her neural activity is completely normal. The surgery was a complete success. She should have no lasting effects from the injury. Thank you, Zara said, for everything. Not just the medical care, but for showing us that there are people in this galaxy who will stand up for what is right. You should know, Dr. Webb said quietly, that your story has already begun spreading throughout human space. What you did, the courage it took to leave everything behind to protect your daughter's freedom to think, has inspired a lot of people. Zara looked confused. I do not understand. I simply did what any mother would do. Maybe any mother would want to do what you did, Dr. Webb corrected. But not every mother would have the courage to actually do it. You risked everything on the hope that somewhere in the galaxy, someone would help you. That took incredible faith. On the bridge, the standoff continued. The Zalari ships had not withdrawn, but they had also stopped firing. Commander Thex was clearly weighing his options, calculating whether his personal vendetta was worth a larger conflict. Captain Chen received a priority message from Admiral Torres. The Admiral wanted to speak with Zara directly, to understand the full situation before making any diplomatic decisions. Zara, Captain Chen called through the comm system. Admiral Torres needs to speak with you. Can you come to the bridge? When Zara arrived, she was struck by the calm professionalism of the Admiral. This was clearly someone who had faced impossible situations before and found ways to navigate them. Zara, I need to understand exactly what happened on your world, Admiral Torres said. The more information I have, the better I can protect you and your daughter. Zara took a deep breath and began her story. She told of a society that had once been exploratory and curious, but had gradually turned inward, viewing contact with other species as dangerous corruption. She described how questioning these beliefs had become forbidden, how children were punished for expressing curiosity about other ways of life. My husband was once different, she said sadly. When we were young, he dreamed of exploring other worlds, meeting other species. But the military council promoted him by convincing him that such dreams were weakness. He learned to hate the parts of himself that had once wondered about the galaxy beyond our borders. And your daughter inherited his curiosity? Admiral Torres asked. Yes, but she inherited it during a time when such curiosity was no longer tolerated, when she began asking why we fear other species, why we consider outside ideas dangerous. Her father saw it as a personal failure. He blamed me for not controlling her thoughts properly. Admiral Torres studied the tactical display, where the Zalari ships continued their threatening patrol. Commander Thex is your husband? No, my husband is Kolar, but Thex is his brother, and they think exactly alike. Thex will never withdraw peacefully. He sees this as a personal insult that must be answered with violence. Then we need to give him a reason to reconsider, Admiral Torres said grimly. She opened a channel to the entire fleet, both military and civilian. All vessels, this is Admiral Torres. We are going to demonstrate to our Zalari friends exactly what happens when you threaten people under human protection. Form up for coordinated maneuvers. The response was immediate and coordinated. The civilian ships moved with surprising precision, their captains following military protocols they had learned through necessity during the battle. The Federation destroyers took point positions, their weapon systems fully charged and targeting solutions locked. Commander Thex watched this display of unified purpose with growing unease. He had expected the civilians to flee once military vessels arrived. Instead, they had stood their ground, creating a force that was greater than the sum of its parts. For the first time since arriving at Meridian Station, he began to question whether his mission was worth the price it would demand. The massive freight hauler Lucky Strike was the first to arrive, its captain having pushed the engines beyond safe limits to reach Meridian Station. Captain Maria Santos had been running cargo between the outer colonies for 20 years, and she had never backed down from a fight that mattered. Meridian Station. This is Lucky Strike, her voice crackled over the comm. I know I'm not much to look at, but I've got mining charges that can be rigged as torpedoes if you need them. Lucky Strike. This is Captain Chen. Any assistance is appreciated, but stay clear of the combat zone. These are military vessels. Understood, Meridian. But just so you know, there's 7 more civilian ships about an hour behind me. Word's gotten out about what you're doing here. The whole sector's talking about it. Zara listened to this exchange with growing amazement. These were not soldiers or government officials. These were ordinary people, merchants and travelers, who had chosen to risk their lives for strangers they had never met. Commander Thex's voice cut through the chatter, cold and threatening. Unknown vessels. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed along with the station. This is a Zalari military operation. Captain Santos's response was immediate and defiant. This is Captain Santos of the Lucky Strike. I've got news for you, friend. This is a human operation now, and we don't abandon our own. The Zalari commander's next transmission was directed at the station. Captain Chen, you have one final opportunity to surrender the criminals. My patience is exhausted. Then you're going to have to learn to live with disappointment, Captain Chen replied. These people are under our protection, and that protection is non-negotiable. The Zalari ships opened fire with everything they had. The station's remaining shields collapsed under the assault, and explosions rocked the structure as hull breaches opened to space. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off damaged sections. But the Lucky Strike was moving, her improvised weapons armed and ready. Captain Santos had retrofitted her mining charges with proximity detonators, turning her cargo hauler into an unlikely warship. The makeshift torpedoes struck the nearest Zalari cruiser, their explosions sending shockwaves through its hull. Direct hit, Rodriguez called out. Their starboard shield grid is down. The Zalari ships turned their attention to the freight hauler, but Captain Santos was already diving below the engagement plane, using her ship's superior maneuverability to avoid the worst of their fire. More ships began arriving. The passenger liner New Dawn had evacuated her paying customers at the nearest starport and loaded her holds with emergency supplies for the station. The mining vessel Deep Core carried cutting lasers that could slice through armor plating. Even a small pleasure yacht had joined the growing fleet, her owner determined to help despite having no weapons at all. This is impossible, Zara whispered, watching the tactical display as more and more civilian vessels converged on the battle. These people owe us nothing. Why are they risking their lives? Captain Chen overheard her question. Because that's what humans do. When someone needs help, when someone's fighting for what's right, we stand together. It doesn't matter if we're strangers. It doesn't matter if the odds are impossible. The battle became a deadly dance of improvised tactics and desperate courage. The civilian ships used their knowledge of asteroid mining, cargo handling, and passenger transport in ways their designers never intended. They coordinated attacks with the precision of a military fleet, Despite having never trained together, Commander Thex found himself fighting not just a space station, but an entire community that had spontaneously assembled to defend two refugees they had never met. His tactical advantage was being eroded by an enemy that refused to follow conventional military logic. "All ships, withdraw immediately," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You are interfering in illegal police action." The response came from a dozen different captains, their voices overlapping in defiant chorus. No one was withdrawing. No one was abandoning the fight. In the medical bay, Dr. Webb sat with Kira as the station shook around them. The child watched the emergency lights flash with curious eyes rather than fear. "Dr. Webb," she asked in her careful standard, "why are so many humans coming to help us?" The doctor considered his answer carefully. "Because we believe that no child should be hurt for asking questions. We believe that no mother should have to choose between her safety and her child's freedom to think." "Is that why Mama brought me here?" "Because humans believe these things." "Yes, I think it is." Kira was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the seriousness that only children can bring to important matters. "When I grow up, I want to be like humans. I want to help people too," Dr. Webb smiled. "You know what, Kira? I think you already are like humans. The best part of being human isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose to be." On the bridge, Captain Chen watched as her improvised fleet continued to harass the Zalari ships. They were holding their own, but barely. The enemy vessels were still more powerful, still capable of destroying them all if they chose to focus their fire. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, massive energy signatures approaching from the jump point, multiple vessels dropping out of hyperspace. The tactical display lit up with new contacts. Captain Chen felt her heart soar as she recognized the sensor signatures. 3 Earth Federation destroyers, their hulls gleaming with fresh battle damage from some distant conflict, had arrived ahead of schedule. "Meridian Station, this is Admiral Rebecca Torres aboard the Defiant. Sorry we're late to the party. What's the situation?" As the Federal warships moved into attack formation, their weapons trained on the Zalari cruisers, Captain Chen realized that this moment would echo across the galaxy. Today, 2 species had learned something fundamental about each other. The Zalari had learned that humans would sacrifice everything to protect the innocent, regardless of species or politics, and humanity had proven once again that their greatest victories came not from superior weapons or tactics, but from their refusal to let tyranny go unchallenged. The first salvo from the Zalari cruisers struck Meridian Station's shields with a violence that shook the entire structure. Emergency lighting bathed the command center in red as damage reports flooded in from across the station. "Shields down to 70%, Rodriguez called out, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Return fire?" Captain Chen gripped her command chair as another barrage hammered their defenses. The station's weapons were designed for defense against pirates and small raiders, not military warships. "Fire at will, but prioritize shield preservation. We need to buy time." The station's defensive batteries responded, sending streams of energy toward the attacking vessels. The shot struck the lead cruiser's shields, causing them to flicker but not fail. The disparity in firepower was obvious to everyone on the bridge. Zara stood near the back of the command center, watching these humans risk their lives for her and Kira. She had grown up believing that aliens were selfish, concerned only with their own survival. Yet here were complete strangers willing to die rather than abandon their principles. Dr. Webb's voice crackled through the comm system. "Captain, the child is awake. She's asking for her mother." "Go," Captain Chen told Zara. "Be with your daughter. We'll handle this." Zara hesitated. "Captain, there is something you should know. My husband Kolar was once a fleet commander himself. He will not simply demand our return. He will make this personal. He sees any challenge to his authority as an insult that must be answered with blood." Another impact shook the station, this one stronger than the last. The lights flickered as power was automatically rerouted to the shields. "Then he's about to learn what happens when you threaten a human station," Captain Chen replied grimly. Zara ran through the corridors toward the medical bay, dodging repair crews and emergency personnel. When she reached Kira's bedside, she found her daughter awake but confused, her large eyes darting around the unfamiliar room. "Mama," Kira whispered in their native language. "Where are we? Why does everything feel different?" Zara sat beside her daughter's bed, taking her small hand gently. "We are safe, little star. The humans are protecting us." "Humans?" Kira's eyes widened with curiosity rather than fear. Real humans? Like in the stories teacher told us about the species who help others? Yes, just like in those stories. Zara smoothed her daughter's silver hair. But Kira, your father is here. He has brought ships to take us back. The light in Kira's eyes dimmed. I don't want to go back, Mama. I don't want to be hit again for asking questions. Dr. Webb entered the room carrying a medical tablet. How are you feeling, Kira? He asked, speaking slowly so his words would translate clearly. Kira looked at him with wonder. You are the healer who fixed my head? I am, Dr. Webb smiled. You were very brave during the surgery. The station is shaking, Kira observed with the directness of children. Are we in danger? Before anyone could answer, another massive impact rocked the station. This time, the lights went out completely for several seconds before the emergency power kicked in. Captain Chen's voice echoed through the comm system. All non-essential personnel to emergency shelters. Medical teams prepare for casualties. Dr. Webb checked his instruments quickly. Kira is stable enough to be moved if necessary, he told Zara. But the emergency shelters would be safest for both of you. No, Zara said firmly. If these humans are willing to fight for us, the least I can do is not cower in hiding. She looked down at her daughter. Kira, do you remember the emergency drills at school? The child nodded. Good, Dr. Webb will take you to a safe place. I need to help Captain Chen. Mama, don't go, Kira pleaded, gripping her mother's hand tighter. I must, little star. These people need to understand what they are truly facing. Zara kissed her daughter's forehead. Dr. Webb will keep you safe. He saved your life once already. Back in the command center, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The station's shields were down to 30%, and 2 of the defensive batteries had been destroyed. Captain, Rodriguez called out, I'm reading massive power buildups in all 3 Zalari ships. They're preparing for a coordinated assault. Time to fleet arrival, 4 hours, 37 minutes. Captain Chen closed her eyes for a moment, calculating odds that were becoming increasingly impossible. When she opened them again, her resolve was unwavering. Signal all ships in the sector. Any vessel capable of combat, we need assistance. Captain, most of the ships in range are civilian freighters and passenger liners, Rodriguez pointed out. Signal them anyway. Sometimes civilians can be the bravest fighters of all. Zara entered the command center just as the communication went out. She heard the responses coming back over the comm channels. A dozen different voices from different ships all saying the same thing. They were coming to help. You see, she said quietly to Captain Chen. This is why my daughter asks forbidden questions. This is why some of us wonder if our isolation has made us smaller rather than stronger. The Zalari ships moved closer, their weapons charged and ready for the killing blow, but their commander had made a crucial mistake. He had assumed that humans would behave like Zalari, that they would abandon their principles when faced with superior force. He was about to discover that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their military might. It was their refusal to abandon those who had placed their trust in them, regardless of the cost. As the enemy ships prepared their final attack, Captain Chen stood straighter. Around her, the crew worked with calm efficiency, preparing for what might be their last stand. None of them had suggested surrender. None of them had questioned the decision to protect 2 alien refugees. In that moment, Zara finally understood what her daughter had been searching for in her questions about other species. She had been looking for proof that somewhere in the galaxy, there existed people who would choose what was right over what was safe. 3 hours later, Dr. Webb emerged from the surgical suite, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Zara had remained in the waiting area, pacing the small room like a caged animal, her alien features twisted with worry that needed no translation. She's stable, Dr. Webb announced and watched as Zara's legs nearly gave out with relief. The surgery went well. The neural pressure has been relieved and the internal bleeding has stopped. She should make a full recovery, though it will take time. Zara sank into a chair, her hands covering her face as tears that looked remarkably like human tears fell through her fingers. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for saving her life. Dr. Webb sat down across from her, studying this alien woman who had risked everything for her child. Zara, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Your husband's violence toward Kira, was this the first time? She shook her head slowly. No. It has been getting worse since she started school. The teachers there speak of other worlds, other ways of thinking. Kira began asking why our people only interact with those who think exactly as we do. She wondered why we consider contact with other species dangerous. Zara looked up at Dr. Webb, with eyes that held a galaxy of pain. My husband believes these thoughts make her weak, make her a traitor to our blood. What species are you? Dr. Webb asked gently. We are Zalari. We live in the Proxima sector, 3 systems from here. Our government teaches that contact with aliens contaminates the purity of our thoughts, makes us less than what we were meant to be. She laughed bitterly. Yet here I am trusting my daughter's life to aliens because my own people would rather see her die than think differently. Captain Chen's voice echoed through the medical bay's comm system. Dr. Webb, please report to the command center. We have incoming vessels. Dr. Webb felt his stomach drop. How many ships, Captain? 3 Zalari military cruisers, approaching fast. They're demanding we return their stolen property immediately. Zara's face went white, her eyes wide with terror. They found us. Kolar has connections in the fleet. He convinced them I kidnapped Kira. She grabbed Dr. Webb's arm with surprising strength. Please, you must understand. If they take us back, they will execute me for theft and treason. And Kira. They will send her to a correction facility where they will break her spirit until she thinks only approved thoughts. Dr. Webb helped Zara to her feet. Come with me. Captain Chen needs to hear this directly. They made their way to the command center, where the atmosphere was thick with tension. On the main view screen, 3 sleek warships hung in space like deadly predators. Their hull design was elegant but menacing, all sharp angles and weapon ports. Captain Chen, Zara said as they entered, I am sorry for bringing this danger to your station. My people do not negotiate. They will demand you surrender us, and if you refuse, they will consider it an act of war. Captain Chen turned to face her, and Zara was surprised by the steel in the human woman's eyes. Let me be very clear about something, Zara. You and your daughter requested asylum. Under human law and interstellar treaties, you are under our protection until we can properly evaluate your claim. The Zalari do not recognize interstellar treaties, Zara said quietly. They believe such agreements contaminate our independence. Then they're about to learn about human stubbornness, Captain Chen replied grimly. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his console. Captain, the lead Zalari ship is hailing us. Put them through. The view screen flickered, revealing a Zalari male in military uniform. His features were similar to Zara's, but harder, more angular. When his eyes spotted Zara on the bridge, they filled with cold fury. I am Commander Thex of the Zalari Defense Fleet. You are harboring a criminal and stolen Zalari property. Return them immediately, or face the consequences of interfering in Zalari justice. Captain Chen stepped forward. I am Captain Sarah Chen of Earth Federation Station Meridian. The individuals you seek have requested asylum under interstellar humanitarian law. They will remain under our protection pending a full investigation of their claims. Commander Thex's expression darkened. Humans have no authority over Zalari citizens. Your interference is an act of aggression against our sovereignty. Your citizens include a severely injured child who was beaten by her father, Captain Chen shot back. If that's what you call sovereignty, then yes, we're interfering. The transmission cut abruptly. On the tactical display, the Zalari ships began moving into attack formation. Captain, Rodriguez called out. They're charging weapons. All 3 ships. Zara stepped forward, her voice filled with desperation. Please, Captain Chen. I will return with them if it prevents bloodshed. Just, please, find a way to protect Kira. Send her somewhere safe where she can grow up free to think her own thoughts. Captain Chen looked at this alien mother, willing to sacrifice herself for her child's freedom, and felt something ignite in her chest. It was the same feeling she had experienced years ago when she first read about humanity's expansion into space, about their promise to carry freedom and dignity to the stars. No, she said firmly. Nobody is going anywhere. Rodriguez signaled the fleet. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate assistance. Captain, the nearest Earth Federation vessels are 6 hours away, Rodriguez replied. Then we hold for 6 hours. Captain Chen said. She turned to face the view screen where the Zalari ships loomed larger. All hands, this is the captain. Red alert. Prepare for possible hostile action. As the klaxons wailed throughout the station, Zara watched in amazement as the humans around her calmly went about their preparations. They were vastly outgunned, facing 3 military vessels with only a civilian station's defenses. Yet not one of them suggested surrender. She began to understand why her daughter had been so curious about other species. These humans possessed something her people had lost long ago: the courage to stand for what was right even when the odds were impossible. The emergency airlock alarm pierced through the quiet corridors of Station Meridian like a scream in the void. Captain Sarah Chen rushed from her quarters, her bare feet slapping against the cold metal deck plates as she pulled on her uniform jacket. The station's automated systems never triggered false alarms, especially not at 0300 hours when most of the crew was asleep. She burst into the command center to find Lieutenant Rodriguez already at his post, his face illuminated by the amber glow of emergency protocols. "Report," she barked, sliding into her command chair. "Unidentified vessel requesting emergency docking, Captain. Small craft, heavily damaged. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Rodriguez's fingers danced across his console. "The signal is weak, but I'm picking up what sounds like a distress call. Put it through." The speakers crackled with static before a voice emerged, trembling and desperate. The words were in broken standard, heavily accented with an alien dialect Sarah had never heard before. "Please, I ran away from my husband. Please let us in. My daughter. She is hurt. Please, humans, I hear you help those who need." Sarah felt her blood run cold. In her 15 years commanding Meridian Station, she had seen refugees, pirates, and smugglers, but never had she heard such raw desperation in a voice. The speaker was clearly not human, yet the pain transcended species barriers. "Visual contact?" she asked, leaning forward. "Negative, Captain. The craft is running dark, minimal power signatures, but our sensors detect 2 life forms aboard." Rodriguez paused, consulting another screen. "Captain, the vessel's hull integrity is critical. They have maybe 20 minutes before complete structural failure." Sarah's mind raced. Meridian Station sat at the edge of human space, a refueling and resupply point for ships traveling to the outer colonies. They were technically neutral territory, but that neutrality came with responsibilities. Her standing orders were clear: assist any vessel in genuine distress, regardless of origin. Dock them in Bay 7, she decided. Full quarantine protocols. I want medical teams standing by and security teams in position. We don't know what we're dealing with. Aye, Captain. As the massive station's docking arms extended to embrace the failing alien craft, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would change everything. She had heard stories from other station commanders about first contact situations that had gone horribly wrong. But she had also heard about the ones that had gone right, where humanity had proven itself worthy of the trust placed in them. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud that reverberated through the station's hull. On the monitors, Sarah watched as the airlock cycled through its safety procedures. Whatever was about to emerge from that alien craft would test everything she believed about humanity's place in the galaxy. Dr. Marcus Webb arrived in the docking bay just as the inner airlock began to cycle. The station's chief medical officer was a man who had seen everything during his time on the frontier, but even he felt his pulse quicken as the door slowly opened. A figure emerged from the smoke and vapor of the failing life support systems. It was unmistakably female, despite her alien features. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and her hair hung in silver strands around a face that, while clearly not human, conveyed universal expressions of fear and exhaustion. She wore what appeared to be torn formal clothing, stained with what looked like dark purple blood. In her arms, she carried a small form wrapped in a metallic emergency blanket. The child appeared unconscious, her breathing shallow and rapid. The alien mother's large, dark eyes darted between the assembled humans, searching for any sign of threat or salvation. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible through the translator device clipped to her collar. "My daughter needs help. I have nowhere else to go." Dr. Webb stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. Years of experience had taught him that frightened mothers, regardless of species, needed to see him as a healer, not a threat. "I'm a doctor," he said gently. "May I examine your daughter?" The alien woman's grip on her child tightened for a moment before she nodded. As Dr. Webb carefully took the small form into his arms, he was struck by how light the child was, how fragile she seemed. Her skin had the same blue tint as her mother's, but it was pale, almost translucent. "What happened to her?" he asked, already moving toward the medical bay. "My husband," the mother said, her voice breaking. He became angry when he learned she had been asking questions about other worlds, about species that lived in peace. He said she was becoming contaminated by alien thoughts. He struck her and she fell. She has not awakened since. Dr. Webb felt a familiar anger rising in his chest. Domestic violence was a universal evil, it seemed. "What's your name?" he asked as they entered the medical bay. "Zara," she replied. "My daughter is Kira. She is only 6 cycles old." She paused, watching as Dr. Webb began scanning her daughter with medical instruments. "I stole a ship to escape. My husband will follow when he discovers we are gone. He has connections with the military council." Captain Chen's voice came through the comm system. "Dr. Webb, how is the child?" "Severe head trauma," he replied, not looking up from his instruments. "But treatable. I need to operate immediately." He looked at Zara. "I'll need your permission, and I'll need you to trust me completely." Zara nodded without hesitation. "Do whatever you must. She is all I have left in this galaxy." As Dr. Webb began preparing for emergency surgery, Captain Chen watched from the observation deck above. She had made her decision to help these refugees, but she knew that decision would soon be tested in ways she couldn't yet imagine.